Relax your mind, breathe into your belly, and having what I call a non-judgmental frame of mind. If anything comes up, any emotions or anything, just let them out.
Okay.
Sorry if my hands are a little bit cold. Your neck is really tight as well.
Can the head, like you're talking about the feet, can make things easier to release going up the body? Is it the same thing for the head going down, or not so much?
Well, relaxing the head first. I'll tell you a story. So years ago, I used to always do the head at the end of my treatments and just relax the person. But I remember working on this one guy that was so ticklish, like I could hardly touch him without him just jumping anywhere on his body. And then I did his head massage on him, and he actually started to finally relax, and I could actually go into his body. So then I realized that how important it is to actually start with a head massage, in which case then the person's mind starts to relax. It's kind of like the brain wavelengths. You get into those deeper meditative brain wavelengths with a head massage, and that enables the person to come out of like their I call it like the washing machine of the mind, where the thoughts are just kind of going over, and they can start to be tuned into their own body and their own breath, because the breath is such an important thing in Rainer massage, because it's all about like that person going deep inside them and like taking deep breaths and just letting go.
Okay.
Man, you are so tight here in your jaw. So it's kind of like for the person receiving the massage, it's an inward journey. It's kind of like going in on a subtle body level, like a mental, emotional, almost like a spiritual level too, because you're sort of settling into the body and just kind of being at peace with yourself, but without all this kind of like this tension. It's like when you think about what is tension, it's kind of like it's like a subtle energy that's causing. And a lot of people, well, it's hard, it's physical. Well, you could look at, I always use that analogy of air in a tire. Tires become hard but it's filled with subtle energy, like a gas, So when people ask me, well, what is tension? It's like, well, it's some sort of subtle energy that's there, and we sometimes might call that stress. We might call that different things. But it exists on both a mental and an emotional level, as well as physical. So that's kind of what we're trying to get out of your body. It's like everything that's causing all this, and that's why the breath is so important. Just through deep breathing, that's what I call the release mechanism. It's going to let that stuff go. But, crying, screaming, whatever, they all add, depending upon what energies are. And I use that word energy pretty lightly because it's basically could refer to a number of different things, but certainly emotions and what's commonly called stress. When you look at that word stress, it's kind of like, well, what is that? A lot of these words people don't really analyze deep enough.
I guess it's just like discomfort, right? Or the being pushed when you don't really want to be pushed, and then kind of.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of things, really, isn't it? I mean, it can be different things to different people in different circumstances. But
Pain.
yeah. tiredness, you know, having to do things when you're tired, or could be the stress of, you know, almost being in a car accident, or it could be, you know,
Gravity pushing you down.
yeah, kids screaming, you know, your boss, you know, it could be
Being in the embodied condition.
being in this world. A great spiritual teacher once said this place is not for a gentleman. Whoa, it's so tight in there. So, you know, my goal as a Rainer therapist is to find and get rid of this tension in a partnership model with you, you know? And your job is to just breathe into it, let it go, not judge it because you're not it. You know, a lot of people get so caught up, they don't understand who they are. And they think they are their tension, or they are their, sometimes people can, you know, feel like a victim, you know, and they hold on to that, you know. Classic example, I remember a friend of mine and his partner, a nice lady, but she was a nurse in Australia, and she was out on workers' compensation, which is kind of like you get paid when you're not working because of her bad back, and she's like, well, don't fix my back, because me being a victim, I get benefit from it, you know.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but other people get, you know, other benefits where people feel sorry for them, or, you know what I mean? So all of that, a person has to go, that's not me, I can let that go, you know? You know, we all have our, like, poor me kind of stories, and, you know? But all of it needs to just go, I am not that, I'm a dynamic spiritual being moving through time, heading towards death, as you and I talked about, you know. Rock, for those that don't know now, he's working at a director of volunteer services at a hospice, so constantly dealing with people leaving their bodies. It's been a fascinating journey for you, I bet, being there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's really an interesting sensation when you're doing that lower down like that. It's, I guess, just everything is in my body is just kind of sensitive to just because of the tension everywhere.
Yeah, it's like what I call extreme levels of tension. And I said this to you in Hawaii years ago, you know, like, you got a strong constitution, but you misuse it. Or you, I don't know about misusing it, you're using it obviously for good and stuff, like, so I wouldn't, maybe misuse isn't the right word, but you push it to its extreme, you push it to its limit, you know, like somebody with a good truck that runs the engine. You might be pulling some good stuff, but you reckon you're, but as you say, it's hard to find good treatment too, you know.
Absolutely.
I always remember the story of one person saying to me, everything hurt except the ears, and I said, oh, I haven't done that one. But what I find interesting is ears are cartilage. They're not, you know, so for people that think that massage is all about muscles and stuff, you know, rather than the energetic side of things, it's like, why do ears hurt, you know, when they're cartilage, not muscle? And it's because they still have a, you know, what we could call the chi flow through them, or the lack of chi flow sometimes, the chi blockages. And that, to me, is what, like, Asian massage is pretty much shiatsu, tuina, Thai massage. All the great traditions are actually more about the flow of the life energy through the body than they are about the muscles.
How about that? I heard a talk recently, and there was talk of, and I never really thought of it in this way or heard it this way, but how I think there's 5 different airs in the body. Is that right? 5.
Yeah, they're like in Ayurvedic medicine, the
So it's,
Ekana, yeah.
and us as a spiritual being, we're resting in those 5 airs, and then that the air is actually, like, I guess, transporting the influence of us as the spiritual living being to the other, to all the parts of the body. It's going, I guess, through the channels, right?
Mm-hmm.
which I'd never thought of it that way, like that there's actually like the air is actually like kind of moving it, the spiritual influence.
Mm. Yeah, it's fascinating, like looking at the deeper understandings of traditional Vedic culture and Chinese culture and things like that, about the understanding of the embodiment of the soul and then the subtle. There's a layer between the soul layer and the physical layer, which is like the subtle body, and where we hold on to emotions and we hold on to things and stuff like that, you know, and that actually creates tension when we hold on to shit. So some people ask, you know, because what I do when I work on you and then I flick off, you know, I'm like picking up, it's like a vacuum, I'm picking up the energy and then I'm getting rid of it, you know. And it's, again,
Can you actually feel it?
yeah. Hmm. And I think the art of being a good therapist is when you can actually feel it, you know. You're not just going through the motions, but learning to feel the subtlety of chi. And when I first started, a lot of people go, oh, you got a gift or something, but I'm like, fuck, I didn't have this when I first started. I had to learn it, you know, I had to learn. It's like seeing in the dark and using your perception as a flashlight, you know, and that's kind of how a lot of Asian cultures, the massage was done by blind people because they had to learn to see in the dark about, you know, chi, you know, not that they all do, but that's the ability. Like I often massage people with my eyes closed. It always says I can see better, unless I'm near their eyes or something. I make sure I'm not, you know, with their genitals or something. But in general, like right now, I'm massaging with my eyes closed, and then I can. It's like you know how like there's radar and stuff like that. You know, like radar sends out these certain waves and can detect drones or aircraft or something. Well, it's similar to that, or sonar. There's these different things that certain like animals have, like dolphins and things, where they send out sound waves and things. But for me, it's just an ability. I had to develop that ability to perceive into the subtle realms. Because, you know, I know, you know, I've talked about this, you know, I was university educated, and I realized, you know, studying philosophy and psychology and government and political economics, and, you know, I was what I call a head tripper, you know, I thought a lot, you know, and when I had to learn shiatsu and massage and like they're talking about chi and stuff, I'm like, fuck, I can't feel any of this shit, I don't even know, you know, I was really insensitive to it. But gradually I developed it, and I was like, okay, I got to come out of my mind and into my fingers and into perception. So it's like my fingers become like, they can see, you know, they feel, they see. It's just an ability to go into the, you know, because certainly other animals and things can see and hear different things that we can't hear. You know, dogs can hear sounds, but there's an ability that you can develop. And it's done through a multitude of different ways. I mean, like you know, you and I practice mantra meditation together, and the power of certain sacred sounds and things like that. Sound waves can be very, very powerful. But keeping your consciousness clear as well. So no, you know, not taking drugs and alcohol and all that sort of stuff can help.
Oh, in terms of
Perception
of the energetic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Because basically the most important tool, you got two tools. One is your ability to, you know, oh, I'm going to use my strength or my whatever to influence this. But if you don't have perception, then your strength's not going to matter, because you could actually misuse that strength to do something stupid, you know, like hurt a person in a way, you know. So perception is more important than strength or ability, you know, techniques even, because unless you have the perception to know where is the blockage, you don't know which technique to use, nor do you know what level of pressure to use.
One thing I've always liked when you were massaging me in the past is like your kind of intuition of not just of kind of being able to read the larger scope, like what maybe is going on with the person, like that you can sense, like, oh, this person's experiencing depression or sadness or anger, and you can, like, maybe, I mean, sometimes when you're a massage, you're of course you have those videos, and you've talked about it, but when people release those kind of things and it's overt, like there's, they can hear it, you can hear it, and you can,
Yeah.
but sometimes it seems like you're able to see it before
Yeah.
it manifests,
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely. I can see the energy that's trapped in that person. And that's why I'm not scared of like a person crying or a person screaming, because it's better out than in. You know, it's like that sadness is in them. And when they cry, after they cry, they actually feel like they've let go of that sadness. So I'm not scared of people crying, because I'm like, that's a great release. You know, it's like letting that go out of their body, and it comes out through the tears and which is interesting, because in, Chinese medicine, we could look at the different elements, and in Ayurveda. And water is the, emotional element. Air is like thoughts and things. But, even with what they call the vata element, air and ether, when we think about what does ether mean according to Ayurveda, it's the subtle energy in which air is actually existing. So traditional Ayurvedic medicine goes into the layers of the human being, and I was like, when I learned all this, because I did my diploma in Ayurvedic medicine with Dr. David Frawley from the American Institute of Vedic Studies, probably almost 30 years ago now. And I was like, okay, and plus, learning different Vedic philosophies and Chinese medical philosophies and things. And it's like, okay, what are these subtle layers of the human being, and how can I perceive them, So it's kind of like I was looking, and then I'm going, oh, what's that I sense, And instead of, a lot of people, that skeptical part of their mind rules out, where they're like, I don't know anything, I can't see that kind of thing, and nobody else can, and And I was like, no, I'm just going to keep looking and practicing and trying to feel and learning through, like, feeling what's going on with people. And then getting a lot of massage, and you could get, the best massages I've ever gotten have always been from people with good sense of perception. And I'm like, wow, you bring an awareness into your fingers of what you're doing. You're not just like a rote learning or mechanical thing. And you're not insensitive, you're not too light, not too heavy. But very effective, and I was like, that's what I want to develop, And so yeah, a lot of my learning really has been from the Asian side of things. Great respect to Japanese teachers and Chinese, and even I learned a lot from Thai massage, and just their philosophies of the subtle body. And then I started to look at the differences between the different philosophies, like the Thais have their Sen lines and things which were energetic lines, and then Chinese have their meridians that the Japanese have adopted. But I had a Japanese guy work for me who trained at the Tokyo, one of the best shiatsu places in Tokyo, I forgot the name, but he was talking to me about hidden meridians and things like that, and I was like, oh wow, show me that, And I trained with some guys from in Sydney years ago that worked at the Tokyo School of the Blind, and Yuichiro Ogawa, he's one of my friends now. He taught me a lot just about their ability that a lot of Japanese people have to perceive chi and ki. And even like when you look at it, the culture, like when they say, how are you? It's genki desu ka, and that's, how is your chi today?
really?
Yeah. Ki, genki, Genki is one way to write it. And that's your health. Tenki is the weather, which is the chi of the weather, you know what I mean? So, and what I noticed, he had an amazing perception in his hands, and I was like, dude, you can feel shit, And it's cultural to a certain extent. Not all Japanese people. I've had massage from Japanese people who don't, but obviously that was one of the most elite schools, and he was over in Australia working at the Hilton Hotel, and, I was teaching him English, and he was teaching, but I was like, damn, you got a good ability to perceive, and I'm like, I want that, And so it's sort of like you can, and I realized what was holding me back, and part of it was, like I was talking about, my mental aspect, thinking that I could understand things mentally because of my university education and things like that, and I realized that perception's different than intellectual understanding. And so I had to kind of calm down that whole intellectual thing. I'm just going to get you to open your jaw a little bit. That's it. Kind of like, we were talking, you were involved in politics and stuff in Hawaii, and then, I was working on you and you were stressed out, and I was like, you got to get it to your heart. It was the same with me. I was involved not with so much, I mean, I did study government and political economy and stuff, and I have been involved in politics in Australia, but it was the same, coming into your heart, and what your heart is where your soul is, and it's also where perception comes from, empathy and that kind of thing. But the word empathy is obviously, and I know you've had a lot of things to think about empathy when you're dealing with loved ones of people passing away and bereavement and stuff. But yeah, it's more than just the mental, as you're saying goodbye to people that are leaving this world and things. It's that perception of spirit, and that ability then, like what aloha, namaste mean. Like aloha is more than just hello. It's I greet the spirit in you, but also kind of love. That connection between. When you think about what does the word love mean, you've got the different Greek words, agape and philos and eros, but. Philos being like brotherly love, and could be obviously sisterly or whatever as well, soul to soul, individual souls. And that's kind of like also where I think it's very important to come from with massage is that aloha spirit, or the namaste, the philos aspect of love, and then what is that? It's just so many people misuse the word love. It just means. It can mean so many different things. I always like to say to people, you got people that love peanut butter. Pedophiles love children, It's like parents like to kill love to kill pedophiles, It's like, what a fucking, English is such a fucking weird language, we just don't question it, but that stupid ass word love is like can have opposite meanings,
Making love.
Making love, yeah. Love is love. It's like, no fucking isn't, Or, you and I are vegetarian, and you can hear people, I love steak, Somebody else loves cows, you know what I mean? It's like, the cow prefers a certain type of love, Same with children, They prefer the love of their parents rather than the love of a pedophile. It's just a stupid ass word. So looking into that on an energetic level is what is philos, or what is the real word, meaning of that connection between two people, and that's really got to be what motivates a good therapist, in my opinion.
Yeah, compassion and actually to care about.
Actually, to
someone
care,
else.
yeah.
And it's interesting what you're talking about too, about as you're kind of stirring this stuff up and you're assisting, you're kind of the director of helping the person in a partnership as you're working on them to like release the stuff, right? You're like, like the whole concept of them separating themselves from the stuff, from the junk, the garbage that's that's coming out, and then not getting all tripped out that it's like me, and it's like, oh no, it's that's I'm bad because I like whatever.
Yeah, guilt, shame, you know what I mean? Like I got a few stories. One story, I was treating a teacher of mine in London, maybe 15 or 20 years ago. I forgot now, but anyway, she was a nice girl, and I didn't end up doing this 6-hour treatment on her.
Wow.
And afterwards, she goes, I didn't know who I was anymore, and I was like, that's so interesting, because she let go of these layers, and being a London girl, and she was an actress, and I suppose when you're an actress, you kind of play in different parts, but I think a lot of people play different roles in their life anyway. They're kind of acting when they're not, not just on stage, but and so, but she was able to and she's like, I didn't know who I was. Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the characters that she was playing in real life. Real life.
Yeah.
And then as you were after 6 hours on the table, she kind of came to the realization
she wasn't any of them. She wasn't just this. Because people can be defined by their culture, by their, like you're in a big city especially where you don't have that time to think about who and you're like, I'm going to play this role. I'm going to play this role. and these roles are promoted in society as cool things, or as, like even through like film and TV, we get like role models, like you think of that word role is a role we play, and a model is somebody to aspire to be like. So, but another example of the opposite side of that, again in London, it's a Polish student of mine, and her husband had committed suicide, and he blamed her for it, and she had all this guilt about it, and she was like, she actually didn't want to let that go because she felt like she deserved to suffer because her husband had,
Wait,
blamed.
wait, he had
Committed suicide, but
But
left
before-
a suicide note or whatever.
Yeah.
You're
Okay.
to blame,
Oh
fucking,
shit, that's
and
terrible.
It's horrible. What a thing to put on somebody.
Oh man.
And she couldn't let that go. I was like, just let it go. She's like, oh, I can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, you're not, if he chose to kill himself, that's his choice,
Oh, what a trip.
What a trip, yeah. But she just felt like she had to keep that guilt and that shame and make herself suffer.
So what happened with her?
Well, in the end, I tried to convince her to let it go, but it had to be her choice.
And she was holding on to
Yeah,
it.
she was holding on to it, so I couldn't really, it's not me that does that. That's why I say it's a partnership model of medicine, She has to kind of want to go, I am not that guilt. I am not even, like really, it's not even, she might, I don't know whether she was a good wife or whatever, but it's his choice to commit suicide. He could have left her, So, and whatever, marriages are.
Or he could have been
He could have been a
just
game
tolerant.
Yeah, exactly.
And like and
yeah, it's a form of-
reflective on the fact that he's not perfect either.
Yeah, exactly.
And that she's trying to help her.
Yeah, exactly. So, like I was trying to convince her of that, but I actually wasn't able to convince her. So it was sad, But maybe one day she'll, maybe the seeds that I planted will fructify, Like it's kind of like what I was talking with you about being a yellow light, green light, or red light, People need to a green light is somebody willing to let go of all their shit that's causing them tension. Whereas a yellow light's not sure, and a red light's somebody that's going, no, I'm not going to let that go, Whether it's because of denial or, some people, like I said, with passive aggressive people, they're like, I'm not angry, Even though they'll start yelling at you. I'm fucking angry, all right? I had a friend who wanted to do that to me. I said, I think you got a lot of repressed anger. I'm not fucking angry. Okay. Whatever you think. But that's like a red light, you know what I mean? I can't work on somebody and go, okay, own, because I always say people gotta own their shit and then
Honesty,
let it go.
right?
Honesty, yeah. It's not like, otherwise too, people can, like, if they got repressed anger and I'm working on them and it comes up, they can go, you're the cause of my anger, No, thank you. Don't feel like being your punching bag today. Emotionally or energetic, yeah. So, it's an interesting art form, having done this for 35 years now.
Yeah, I mean, it can
You
help so many people. I mean, and in a deep way, where like kind of like, I mean, you've talked about that some about, the different people who take your class to be a practitioner, and then like they're doing one thing, and then they are with you for 5 or 10 days, and then all of a sudden their whole lives change, and they're
Yeah.
like, I'm going in a different direction now.
Yeah, that's right. Big breath. So yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating. I tell you, it's a fascinating. Like I studied, like I was saying, psychology at Sydney University. But this tells you so. This profession teaches me so much more about human beings. And it's not just the psyche, because the psyche is really just the mind, you know? It's like, this is holistic, and it teaches the body, and teaches the psyche, but it teaches about the spirit and the embodiment of the spirit as well. You know, I've talked to you about sometimes working on people that have got fucking another entity in them, you know? Which sounds like a lot of bullshit, you know? And I probably wasn't, I was a little bit skeptical of it when I first heard about it myself until I seen it.
Yeah, that's so
That's